By 1909, Evansville had become an industrial river city. The skyline was dominated by smokestacks and church steeples. The stacks from the numerous furniture factories, foundries, and textile mills belched black coal smoke that often left a gray haze hanging over the Ohio Valley. Under the hustle and bustle of the working city was an unseen world. Few ventured into its depths, but hidden deep beneath the streets were a maze of tunnels and rooms from which Evansville drew over 250,000 tons of coal in 1909 alone. The growing river city enjoyed all the benefits of a prosperous town. March of 1909 brought highs in the mid-50s, and songs such as By the Light of a Silvery Moon, I Wonder Who's Kissing Her Now, and On Wisconsin filled the living rooms of families everywhere. On Saturday, March 20th, Evansville's population of 69,600 people was experiencing another typical day when the weekend atmosphere was suddenly interrupted by a horrendous explosion at the Sunnyside mine. The blast sent a cloud of dust out of the air shaft with the velocity of a hurricane. The dust cloud that rose from the mine shaft alerted many West Siders that something had gone terribly wrong. The shock wave was so powerful that it stopped the ventilation fan and shut off the flow of oxygen to the mine underneath, leaving any survivors of the blast with only poisonous gases to breathe in. The Sunnyside mine was located on the west side of Evansville at the end of 11th Avenue and Maryland Street. The explosion took place in the New Works section of the mine under present-day Helfrich and Golfmore Parks, over 200 feet underground. It was estimated that there were between 25 and 30 men in the mine at the time of the explosion. The mine was designed with a series of large rooms off of a main hallway. The rooms were generally 50 feet long by 15 feet wide. 4 to 6 men would work in a room, drilling holes into the face of the wall and placing charges that would blast the coal loose so that the men could shovel it into carts pulled by mules. The deadly explosion took place near the end of the workday. Because it was a Saturday, the workers were set to get off at 3. The explosion was referred to as a windy shot in the local papers. A windy shot occurred when a hole that had been drilled into the mine wall was overcharged with powdered and improperly packed loose gravel instead of blasting clay. When the charge would go off, the main force of the blast would blow out of the hole instead of being absorbed in the wall, loosening the coal. Sometimes secondary explosions would occur when dust particles in the air would be ignited by the original blast. The streetcar company spread word of the disaster, and within several hours, over 500 people were gathered at the entrance of the mine. Many were friends and family of the miners, but some were also concerned citizens on site. Among the first safety officials to arrive was Captain Thomas Coughlin of No. 7 Hose Company, who happened to work at the mine prior to joining the fire department. The first city official to get there was the president of the safety board, Benjamin Bossy, who had been at his furniture company office on 9th Avenue. Mayor John Nolan would arrive on the scene at about 3:30. After 2 anxious hours of waiting, the recovered bodies of the miners were brought up the shaft. The final tally counted 5 dead and 1 critically injured, as well as numerous miners with non-life-threatening injuries. The miners killed were Joseph Shank, William Schnudi, Sam Coomer, Nelson Willingham, William James Willingham, and John Pettit. They were a cross-section of the working class in Evansville. Of the 6 dead, 4 were white and 2 were black, 1 Catholic and 5 Protestant. Joe Shank, president of the miners' local union, was the last of the dead men to be brought to the surface. They found him lying amid the debris of the wrecked gallery, his face buried in earth and broken coal. The second of the miners killed was John Pettit. He was married and fathered 1 son. Although he was alive when rescuers found him, his face and skull were burned beyond recognition. He had no ears or eyes and barely clung to life as he was taken to St. Mary's, where he died early the next morning. Tragically, the oldest and youngest men killed in the explosion happened to be a father and son mining team. The only African Americans killed in the blast were 60-year-old Nelson Willingham and his 17-year-old son, William James. 35-year-old Sam Coomer suffered fatal injuries including a broken back and leg, a caved-in skull, and his body was completely blackened. William Schnudi was found wrapped around a post. Officials recovered him very bruised with a badly burned head that had a hand-sized hole in it. He was 30 years old, married, and had one son. His son Oscar watched for his father as the bodies were taken from the shaft and was horrified when he heard that all but Joe Shank had been removed. His father's mangled body had already been carried past him, completely unrecognizable by his own son. The first funeral was held for Sam Coomer on Monday, March 22nd. The funerals for the 5 other miners were held on Tuesday, March 23rd. The unions at the other mines in the city decided without protest to close, so employees could pay their respects to their fellow fallen miners. Immediately after the explosion, a miners' fund to help the families of the mining victims was put together by the Evansville Journal. Local businesses, individuals, clubs, lodges, and unions all helped to donate money to the fund. On April 20th, 1909, exactly 1 month later, the fund was distributed. In total, there was $3,105.90, and each family, both black and white, got an equal share of $620.68. The investigation into the disaster began Saturday very quickly after everything was cleaned up. Miners claimed that the explosion was a result of a buildup of coal dust, something of which the company was aware. However, at the conclusion of the investigation, it was found that the miners had broken state laws and caused the accident. In fact, it was the same exact thing that caused the explosion of Prince Mine in Vermilion County earlier that month. The state report concluded that many different factors aided to the severity of the explosion, including unfired charges tamped with coal dust rather than fireproof clay, which was the legal requirement. Because they were tamped with coal dust, the explosive force could blow back out the hole. Also, there were loosely tamped charges with fuses that could be pulled out easily, overcharged sots that produced enormous amounts of carbon monoxide, and charges placed directly across from each other that produced both dangerous situations and hazardous gases. After the mine was decommissioned in 1932, the above-ground structures remained for a time, but were later replaced by Bernardin Bottle Cap Company. Long forgotten, the closed entrance shaft still exists below the Silgan White Cap Company, located on Maryland and 11th Streets. As the years have gone by, the memory of the Sunnyside mine explosion has long since faded away, but the family members of the victims never forgot the tragedy that happened on March 20th, 1909.
Shouldn't a nature refuge be a refuge? Bimblebox Nature Refuge is one of the last remnants of the desert uplands bioregion in central Queensland. Its 8,000 hectares are home to hundreds of species that have nowhere else to go, and it forms part of our National Reserve system.
But Bimblebox is under threat. Waratah Coal are planning to build one of the world's largest coal mines here, and it looks like the same government that made Bimblebox a nature refuge is going to let it happen. This mine would produce 40 million tonnes of coal a year, which equates to more annual emissions than the entire country of New Zealand. Never before in Queensland has a nature refuge been destroyed for a coal mine. This is an important test case, and if Waratah gets their way, then the future of other nature refuges in Queensland will be in question. The Environmental Impact Assessment was released by Waratah Coal earlier this month, and submissions close Monday, November 7. Please follow these links to make a submission to the Environmental Impact Assessment process. Just let them know that you are aware this land has important conservation value and you won't let it be destroyed, just because the government cares more about coal than a piece of land it has sworn to protect.